The crack of a hand hitting skin echoed through the neighborhood like a gunshot. My wife staggered back, her cheek flaming red where the so-called HOA cop had slapped her. Gasps rippled from the small crowd of neighbors watching, phones half raised, unsure if they should record or stay out of it. Karen, the HOA president, stood smugly behind the uniformed thugs, arms folded like she was some queen watching her soldiers punish peasants. Welcome to Prodigy Tales. Make sure you like and subscribe for your top-notch HOA drama. I froze. Not because I was scared, but because I couldn't believe these wannabe rent-a-cops had actually laid a hand on my wife. Every muscle in my body screamed to react, but I kept my stance loose, my eyes calm, my breathing steady. Old training kicked in. Never rush. Always observe. Wait for the right strike. They had no idea they'd just poked a hornet's nest wearing a Navy SEAL uniform. Your wife was resisting, one of the uniformed goons barked, trying to look tough. His chest puffed out, baton dangling from his hand like he'd ever been in a real fight. Another laughed and muttered something about teaching lessons. My wife clutched her face, glaring back with fire in her eyes, refusing to let them see her break. Touch her again, I said quietly, my voice low enough to make the nearest neighbor swallow hard, and you'll regret it. Karen rolled her eyes dramatically, waving her manicured fingers. Oh, please, you don't scare anyone here. These men enforce HOA law, and you two are violators. Parking where you're not allowed, putting up decorations without permission. Rules matter. Rules? That was her excuse for assault? I wanted to laugh. My wife tried to speak, but one of the fake cops shoved her back against the fence, rough enough to draw another round of gasps. Phones were recording now. The crowd wanted blood, figuratively, of course, but I knew what they really wanted was a show. Sir, the taller cop sneered, stepping in my face, if you don't step back, you're next. I tilted my head, measuring the distance between us. One step, one move. That's all it would take. My hands flexed. Training told me patience, but rage told me the lesson was about to begin. Before we dive in deeply, let us know in the comments where you're watching this story from. People think these kinds of explosions happen overnight. Truth is, they simmer for weeks. The slap wasn't some random act, it was Karen and her pet cops finally crossing the line after months of poking at us like bored children with a stick. It all started with a flag. Not just any flag, my old unit flag hanging neatly in the front yard, right where I wanted it. To me, it was a piece of my history. To Karen, it was unsanctioned decoration that disrupted the neighborhood's visual uniformity. Translation: it wasn't beige enough for her liking. She sent her warning letters, stuffed them with threats about fines, and even left one taped to my wife's car windshield with the sticky note, "Take it down or we take matters into our own hands." Subtlety has never been Karen's strong suit. My wife, bless her, refused to give in. She stood firm every time the HOA's minions came snooping around. That's when things got ugly. One Saturday, I came home to find two uniformed men, hired by the HOA, poking around the flagpole like they were searching for contraband. My wife was in the yard, standing her ground. "This is our property. You don't touch it," she told them. Their response? Mock laughter and threats to remove the violation by force. See, here's the problem. Karen had gotten it into her head that these men weren't just security guards. No, she called them HOA enforcement officers. She even gave them little plastic badges. They strutted around like mall cops who thought they were FBI. And with every little order she barked, they grew bolder. When my wife blocked them from touching the flag, one of them shoved past her. She pushed back. He called it resisting HOA authority, and just like that, they turned physical. Slaps, shoves, Karen watching from the driveway like a director on a movie set. I wasn't there that day, but my wife told me everything, and the neighbors whispered the rest. They said Karen's cops had been itching for a showdown, bragging about putting us in our place. I let it slide at first. That's what discipline teaches you. Choose your moment. But when I finally saw one of them slap my wife in front of me, that was the last straw. The tall one puffed his chest out like a rooster, stepping close enough for me to smell his cheap cologne. "Last warning," he said, tapping his baton against his palm. "Step back or we'll make you." His buddy, the one who had slapped my wife, cracked a grin like he just won a prize. The crowd murmured, phones up, waiting for the moment this circus turned into a brawl. I gave them what they wanted. The second the baton swung toward me, my hand shot out, One twist, one pull, crack. His wrist bent at an angle that made him yelp like a kicked dog. The baton clattered to the ground, and I slid it neatly behind me with my boot. Calm, precise, controlled. The slap-happy one lunged next. Big mistake. He swung wide, sloppy, like a drunk at a bar fight. I stepped aside, grabbed his arm mid-swing, and redirected his momentum straight into the hood of Karen's shiny Lexus. Thud. He slid down the front bumper, groaning, while Karen shrieked like I just keyed her car instead of flattening her attack dog. "You assaulted an officer," she screamed, voice shrill enough to crack glass. I chuckled. "Officer? These clowns aren't even qualified to guard a mall fountain." The neighbors laughed nervously, some even clapping. Phones zoomed in on Karen's red face as she realized her HOA army wasn't just losing, they were being dismantled with surgical precision. The tall one recovered, red with embarrassment. He tried to tackle me low. Rookie mistake. I shifted my weight, let him barrel forward, and used his momentum to flip him flat onto his back. The air left his lungs in one ugly wheeze. I leaned down, my knee on his chest, and whispered so only he could hear. "Rule number 1, you never touch my wife." The crowd erupted now. Cheers, laughter, and a few neighbors egging me on like it was Friday night entertainment. Karen shouted for backup, waving her phone like she was calling in the National Guard. But her so-called enforcers were done. One clutched his wrist, the other wheezed on the ground, and the third was still peeling himself off her Lexus. The scene looked like a battlefield, except the only casualties were Karen's pride and her 3 broken toys. One was cradling his wrist, whimpering about ligaments. Another wheezed on the ground like he'd swallowed a vacuum. The last was sliding down Karen's Lexus again, leaving a nice streak of sweat across the hood. Neighbors had their cameras out, narrating the play-by-play like it was a pay-per-view fight. Karen, of course, still hadn't learned. She stormed toward me, phone in hand, jabbing a manicured finger in my face. "You're finished. I'll have you arrested for assaulting HOA officers." I raised an eyebrow. "Officers. Karen, they're not even licensed security. You put them in fake uniforms, gave them fake badges, and told them they had the right to hit people. Do you know what that's called? Impersonating law enforcement." The color drained from her face, but I wasn't done. I pulled my phone out, already dialing. "You wanted to play cops? Let's call the real ones." When the squad cars rolled in, the crowd scattered like pigeons, except the ones who wanted to see Karen get what was coming. The officers didn't need much convincing. The video spoke louder than I ever could. 3 men in knockoff uniforms slapping, shoving, and threatening my wife while Karen orchestrated it all from the background like a deranged director. The HOA cops were cuffed right there, still groaning from the lesson I'd given them. One of the real officers actually smirked at me, shaking his head. Guess they picked the wrong house. Karen tried to pivot, whining about community standards and enforcing bylaws, but it was too late. The officers warned her she could face charges for organizing the stunt, especially since she'd hired unlicensed muscle and handed them fake badges. In the end, Karen wasn't in handcuffs, but she might as well have been. Lawsuits, fines, and HOA board resignations followed like dominoes falling. The end. Please, like and subscribe for more HOA showdowns like this. Do you think Karen and her wannabe cops got what they deserved? Comment below.